Episode 3 came in with a bang. It's all about subterfuge and deception. The sleight of hand, the false bottom in the briefcase. They are snaking through defenses, hiding in plain sight, and their threats are concealed in casual conversation. Welcome back to the Bootleg Corner. It is movie review hours once again, and Shogun episode 3 reaction hours, and it is our favorite characters doing what they do best, scheming and fighting their way to stay alive. Toranaga shows he is indeed the wily one, plotting his escape in plain sight while he sends Yabushige and Mariko out of Osaka in public while making secret plans to join the convoy so as to escape certain death, since the other 4 regents have plotted on his demise. Toranaga knows Yabushige is in cahoots with Ishido and has betrayed him heavily, but he keeps him close. After all, friends close, enemies closer is the motto. John Blackthorne is learning as he goes on. He is the only one who spots the switch made by Toranaga ahead of the journey as he hides in the carriage while his daughter feigns pregnancy cramps to divert attention. From here on out, it is a challenge of getting out of the city successfully, as they know their lives are in danger every step of the way. John Blackthorne comes to the rescue here, and multiple times in this episode, first preventing the carriage from being searched by Ishido's men, and then later procuring a ship and navigating their escapes. They make it to the forest and then encounter bandits whose lead mission is to kill John Blackthorne at the behest of Lost Ishido, Ono, and Kiyama. Here they find out they have been played, as Toranaga emerges from a carriage that has been hit by flaming arrows. They fight their way through to the harbor, procuring boats and finally a ship, but then there is a squadron of bandits waiting for them on the riverbanks just before the deep sea. They switch over to the black ship, bargaining heavily with the runaway Portuguese traders, while Blackthorne is left behind on the slow oar-powered ship as conditions for their aid. Blackthorne, however, displays his will to survive once again and maneuvers the smaller ship to tack along the black ship to break through the boats filled with bandits waiting on the riverbanks. Thereafter, he is commended by Toranaga, given a new name and an army commission, and directed to have a bath in the chilling sea. Now to analysis. Culture and tradition are once again at the fore of this series. At the beginning, we see Blackthorne being treated for his wounds by a doctor who he dismisses as a quack with silly methods and potions. He then asks if he's going to be bled. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the history of medical practices, prior to modern medical practices and such, it was common in medieval England and the West for bleeding to be the go-to treatment for all ailments. It was believed that the patient would be cut and streams of blood would flow out, sometimes amounting up to a pint or more, before the incision was closed up and the patient is believed to have been treated. So no matter the sickness, fever, headaches, injuries, and so on and so forth, an already weak patient who even required more blood circulation would be drained of the little they had simply because they thought it was the answer. As a matter of fact, if you research the funny treatments they used to mete out in this era and the seemingly light conditions people used to die from, you'd appreciate modern medicine better. Now, coming away from that, we see how much loyalty and honor swell on one side as treachery and dishonor claim the other side. Yabushige has been in cahoots with Toranaga's enemies, and yet he is kept close but out of the loop, while Toda Hirokatsu fights until his last breath, literally giving his life so that his lord can make it safely out of Osaka. Mariko loses her husband, who puts on a valiant, inspired effort against Ishido's men in the full view of Toranaga's retinue. Now, I think this could set up a relationship between Mariko and Blackthorne along the lines, because I've been picking up the vibes from these two, and Hirokatsu's death provides an excellent excuse to move their plotline forward. And once again, we are confronted with the history and restrictions of sea travel as Toranaga makes his escape from Osaka. Their first ship is small, wooden, and can be conquered by flaming arrows in the hands of the bandits waiting for them on the riverbanks. They are also hampered by speed, as their ship relies on oars rather than sails. Now, shipping has come a long way in the years since, but then the linear progression was the use of oars dependent on the strength of your backs, then the use of sails dependent on the speed of the wind, and finally coal and steam engines. Now, without wind on sailman boats, speed will be very hard to come by. We also see how the rudders for the ship, big heavy wooden bars that needed heavy maneuvering to steer the ship to the right course. Of course, as the year went by, the rudder changed to the shape of a steering wheel, but at this time, this was what you had to contend with. Then later on, we had the steamships powered by coal before modern day ships with sleek fuel-powered engines. We also saw how hard it was for John Blackton's crew to gain speed to attach themselves to the black ship on their way out of Osaka. So imagine rowing a ship as hard as you can and having to row even harder in times like this. If your oars get broken, as we saw in this scene here, you might be screwed unless you also have sails or 2 sets of oars, which I think they had here. Now, earlier in episode 2, we saw John Blackton's aversion to baiting as he scoffed at the baiting more than once a week, claiming he will catch disease. Now, this is another important point in European history and a funny part of the Japanese and European relations. Bats were not a common occurrence in this age of Europe, and sometimes in modern times you still find people with the same sentiments of taking baths once or twice a week, defending their stance with references to washing off body oils or some other funny assertions. Now, if you are part of the non-bathing society, your reasons are just as funny as the earlier European reasons we are misinformed. But to put the Japanese European culture into question, the Japanese referred to the Europeans as barbarians and the Europeans called the Japanese savages. And yet on this matter of hygiene, we can clearly see what term applies to who. At the end of the episode, we can see Toranaga asks Blackton to teach him to dive, but the clearly subtle joke here is Toranaga making Blackton take a bath in the sea as he dives in repeatedly until Toranaga felt the stench was removed. I can only imagine how they withstood the body odor permeating from Blackton all this while. And now, for those of you in danger of falling in love with Blackton, remember why he is in Japan. He is no friend or foe to anyone. He is a self-serving and selfish individual who will do everything he must to survive. So don't get carried away by the redeemable deeds, because I think the monster still lurks within. Yabushige, on the other hand, feels like a character that will endure and stay on to the finale. He is also self-serving and crafty, and I'm sure he has goals of ascending to Regency or something closer, if not Shogun, so he is one to watch out for. Ishido looks marked for death at some point, entirely too rash and not as calculated. Ono and Kiyama might just be peripheral characters for the entirety of the show, but do not be surprised to see them take the center stage at some point. The Portuguese traders and priests are also ones to watch out for. It will be interesting to see how their dealings with Toranaga play out after this lopsided negotiation, which Toranaga made some heavy concessions. If we know anything about colonial Europeans, it is that they are never satisfied with a little. They push and push up until the whole region is under their control. Toranaga gave them free cash for trade, promised a heavy investment in the silk trade, as well as a church in Edo, which is and was a major city in Japan. It probably was the capital at the time, but I'm not so sure about that. So this relationship going forward is one to watch out for. We'll also see reactions to Toranaga's escape from Osaka. Who bears the brunt of it? Will there be consequences? Does this split up the regents, or do they come in and close ranks and bunker in? There is also promise of a war to come, but Toranaga has already alluded he is not equipped to go against 4 regions in the battlefield. So we will see Shogun episode 3 down the hatch, and we are hungry for more. If you like this or have some thoughts and ideas, please put them down in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe. Keep it locked in, and we'll be back.